This clip out of Montana
Oh yeah,
of
this is important.
State Legislator Zoe Zephyr, transgender member of the legislature, and I'll fill in the gaps that aren't provided by this ABC clip here.
Jesus Christ.
For folks listening, you got some Spaceballs looking motherfuckers coming in here because protesters. What's happened prior to this is Zoe is being disciplined by the House Freedom Caucus, particularly in the majority Republicans in the legislature, because Zoe said that they have blood on their hands for uh, a whole bunch of bills targeting trans people, including that in that case, one outlawing doctors from providing care that is absolutely scientifically studied and provides again like well-being for these children, even if they're under 18. Sorry, I'm going off. Like, and so the blood on their hands comment is entirely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And despite that, uh, Matt, who is it? Let's see. It's Matt Rieger, the majority leader, said that Zoe will not be called on for any sort of business. For instance, in I believe this was pertaining to definitions about man and woman, like the real important shit that needs to be done in Montana is these sorts of like anti-trans bills, and Zoe wouldn't get called on because she would apologize for saying the blood on your hands comment. And so here we'll just continue with this ABC clip.
Yeah.
Number of these folks were arrested to Lewis and Clark County Jail. And yeah, ultimately, the situation remains where literally Zoe's not allowed to speak on these bills that are specifically attacking people of a class that she is. And you know, it's similar to like what we talked about in Tennessee. Um, and there's just like but instead of like actually taking formal, it's a little bit more slimy and cowardly, because instead of taking formal sort of procedures against this legislator, they're just pretending like, oh, she's not following the rules. And I believe the House leader said like the only person silencing her is herself.
Yeah.
And in addition to, of course, misgendering her this entire time.
It's
Um, and so it's like, you know, that's where we're at in fucking Montana. And I remember when Zoe was elected, it's like, great, you know, some progressivity. And
yeah.
there's people again, like, she won that election, right? There are people in Montana who want to be represented by trans people, who that's not a hurdle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know, to see these folks react and not be able to really face what they're doing, because really there's the whole blood in your hands comment, that's going both ways. Both people are accusing that, okay? On the one hand, it's the anti-trans hysteria folks who think that these sort of procedures happen willy-nilly and is some sort of TikTok fad. And those people are either in denial or they're out of fucking touch, because that's just not the reality. It's just not the reality of this situation. And so, like, the idea that the idea that there's any sort of trans issue that with regards to like this sort of care that requires a legislature to get in between a doctor and the people seeking the treatment is absurd. It is a product of Republican campaigns necessities. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Matt. You came on the back. No, I mean it's truly. I mean it's despicable. It's inspiring to see the community show up in Montana there, and come around and challenge this kind of thing. And at this point, I mean that sort of is what it's all on. At this point, it's becoming really really clear that these things are going to have to come on us as citizens and as people start fighting back against this thing. Because, like, I mean, like, again, like, sorry, not to get back on the other track, but like, where is the federal action on this shit that is getting more and more devastating and dangerous, to people's lives and humanity? Where is the government? Where's the federal government on this kind of thing? I mean, it's not there. It's like
Yeah.
kind of wink and a nod every once in a while. Um, I mean, again, like, it shows like, so
Well,
like,
and like we're looking at back at Jan 6. It's like Jan 6 is an ongoing process, right?
yeah.
To the extent you take it seriously.
And again, like, these are like, these are threats to democracy. Here's a representative, somebody wins their election, has the right to speak, right? We all have the right to speak, in my opinion. I'm old school like that. But
Mhm.
like, if ever there's somebody who should be able to go out and speak against something like this, it is, a trans member of the legislature. Being able, who should obviously have the right to speak. And it's like, it's funny how, like, and I know we're going to be covering some of these things in the future, but like, the way that the Republican Party has been operating on the state level, flouting, turn their back on the law, on procedure, on all these kind of things, to, in that case, say like, oh, well, this person didn't follow this rule or that rule, so we're going to try to block them. Or in Tennessee, saying, oh, these people broke the rules of the Tennessee State House, so now they're no longer allowed to be elected members of the body, right?
Right.
I mean, it's purely cynical. I mean, you have to be a moron to see something like this and be like, well, it's just the Republicans really, really care about Robert's rules,
Right.
parliamentary procedure. It's nasty, nasty shit.
And to demand an apology like that is, to me, like, especially coming from the House Freedom Caucus, like, bro, if we're gonna be uncivil, let's just be uncivil. Let's say what we want to say then. Like, but like, if you want to do this thing where you're calling everyone like baby killers and saying you're child butchers, you know what? We're gonna have our free speech too, and we're
Mhm.
gonna just fucking have this because there's no light without heat. And you know what? Yeah, let's dispense with the decorum. Actually,
And like, this shit has accelerated so much. But like, let's also be, clear about this, that these have been fights that have been obscured for a long time. Like, I've known trans people my entire life, who have been attacked both here in Texas or even in the state of Vermont. I don't want to tell anyone's perfect, personal stories. But like, have experienced this kind of bigotry in the 90s and the early 2000s. Um, so it's always been there. But what is happening right now is not that there's like new trans bigotry. It's the enthusiasm, I guess, and like the kind of looking for it, if that makes sense, that the right is doing. Like, they're trying to find ways to do this, versus before it would be things like, universities like not letting certain staff members present in the way that they want to present, or jobs denying people, promotions or even their employment. Right? This has been in this country for a long time. But what's happening right now, the reason it feels like it's accelerating is because it is. It's accelerating because the right and the Republican Party is wanting to sort of make examples of these, this kind of bigotry and these kind of attacks. Like, this has
yeah,
not, like, this has been a part of our society from the get go with people who are trans, right? Um, what is happening right now is a backlash to some of the more social acceptance, and I think like like a purposeful singling out or focus that we're getting from the right wing on these things.
yeah, it's a regrouping. I mean, Defensive Marriage Act was George Bush's reelection campaign. Anti-gay, and that just was too far. That was too far in of advance. Ultimately, and society pushed back against that, and all those same forces that wanted that have basically just regrouped around a new target that they find more easy to pick off. And it's like I said, like that there's any sort of like pediatric sort of debate going on that can be handled in the medical community. You don't
Yeah.
need dumb fucking House Freedom Caucus assholes getting up and calling doctors butchers. That's
Mhm.
that's for politics.
Yeah, no, that's politics, right? And one thing, Matt, like, you were really right about this when the sports stuff started. Um, Again, like, as I was just saying, like, this has been going on for a long time, but like the fixation of the right, like, it just started with asking questions about weight classes. in wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what, it took about 6 months before it started to be full on bans of human beings.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So no peace on that issue. And you know, and across the board, but like no real room for a lot of the nonsense that we've been seeing. You know, well, yeah,
And
it's
I'm confident on these social issues that American people like, even this
I'm
transition.
extremely confident on them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is the thing too, is that like, you know, like this is like, I mean, I always, you know, and sometimes it can be hard when you see things like this, but like also remember what's going on in that room. It's a bunch of people showing up in support of a community member and a member of their community and standing up for them.
Hmm.
That is a real window into, I think, the general American population. You know, I think like even generally, like, you know, beyond even people who are like politically mobilized and motivated to go with things like that, you know, some people might get like the terminology wrong or whatever, but I think generally most people are pretty okay and accepting of different you know, of people, right?
Hmm.
And I think that it's a really important thing to like plant our flag on that, because what the right wants to do is say this is a minoritarian position, this kind of acceptance of other human beings is a fringe thing, when in fact it's reverse, right? The people who are really worked up about this, the bigotry around this, represents like a large enough group that they're doing politics and doing things. I'm not trying to minimize it, but is not the majority in this country by a long shot.
Right.
And like we have to be a little bit more confident, I think, sometimes in saying that and being honest about that, because that's something that should give us hope that like this kind of stuff can't stand. And the only way it stands is when I think people become silent and complacent on it, which is sort of what the right's gambit is, right? If you're
Hmm.
inundated with all of these other fights that are happening right now, it might be easier to ignore something like this, right? That like might not be directly affecting you or like your immediate community, but you know, folks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so like this is a really important time to, I don't know, to be bold and say like, no, the freak position, the strange position, the fringe position is being an anti-trans bigot,
Yep.
versus how the right is trying to portray this kind of thing right